Welcome to the Black Lodge Games podcast. Today we have a very special treat. We're talking about one of our favorite role-playing games of all time, unironically, Within the Ring of Fire, from RAW Immersive Games and our good friend, Andrew Wood. So today we're going to be talking about basically the good, the bad, and the incomprehensible of this game. It is truly something unique, and I love it to death. And Nick, why don't you take us away?
Yeah, this this game is really the catalyst for a lot of, certainly my and no doubt yours as well, Matt, are solidified a lot of our ideas about role-playing, how you should be looking at immersion, how you should be portraying your character, the impact of personality, raw imagination. It's in the name of the game studio, right? RAW Immersive Games. This game is incredibly evocative. It's my favorite fantasy setting. It's definitely a top contender for my favorite game of all time. It's the game I've run the most. It's easy for me to slip into this world. It's super engaging to the imagination. It's brutal. It's balls to the wall. It's a complete mess in many regards, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it is fucking awesome.
Yeah, this, and if Matt, you mentioned the name of the author of the whole game line, Andrew Wood. Those of you who've been in the RPG community on YouTube 10 years ago, you may remember the name. One of the OG RPG influencers or content creators, as you might say, really knocked it out of the park with this game, and more than just the game itself, putting over kind of a philosophy and a worldview to how you should be approaching gaming in general that fits exceptionally well into this very strange, unique world setting with tons of different character options, magic systems, mechanical permutations, and just mechanics in general, which are there to encourage and enhance roleplay.
Sometimes more successfully than others, I will say. But
some more successfully than others, which we'll get into. But enough of the preamble. Talking about, again, the good, the bad, and the incomprehensible. I think the first thing, it's the first aspect or the first chapter of the book. Ander lays out a chapter devoted specifically to role playing, and not just role playing in general, but what is how you should be portraying a character as a player. What is the purpose of a GM? Mm-hmm. He calls a flame tender in this game, in this world. How you should be crafting a campaign, a saga, and
saga, definitely. He would not refer to it as a campaign.
He would not refer to it as a campaign. I have the book. The saga book, the sort of the core rule book.
The three books that you can see on screen. Before we go any farther,
yes.
Over Nick's shoulder, we have what is called the saga book, which would be your core rule book. This has the core mechanic, the basic species that you can choose to play, some information about the setting, and like weapons, equipment, all your general stuff that you need to play the game. In the center, we have 77 Thrones, the Theological Codex, which is far and away one of my favorite RPG supplements ever written.
Yeah. The crown jewel of the game.
Like, for sure. It is every single time I made a character, every single session that I was going to run, I would read from that book. It is basically lays out all of the kind of clerical magic that you have, anything that is where you are drawing on power of the divine. This is a world that has 77 gods to it and more that may not sit on the thrones any longer, but these are the gods that embody different aspects of the world, different philosophies, and are responsible for the creation of all of the various sapient species in the world that you can play. of which there are a ton. And then finally, we have above me, the Book of True Names, which outlined a lot of the magic system, magical items, spirits, demons, all sorts of anything that had to do with like the more spiritual realm of the game is included in that.
Right.
Not the religious. That would be 77 Thrones, but the spiritual
the more
side.
quote unquote arcane magic,
Yeah.
although that distinction really is overly simplifying it for this game. But
Yes.
that's your arcane magic to broaden out as best we can. But I want to read a portion of the role playing chapter, and it goes on more than this excerpt, but it's short and to the point and very well encapsulates a lot of what you and I have been talking about since launching this project. It's under page 8 of the saga book. What is a role playing game? And Andrew writes, role playing games have been part of humanity's culture since our ancestors' minds first evolved and we developed the capacity for imagination. It's the art of the collaborative storytelling around the fire, the act of a little girl pretending to be her favorite animal, and the game of monster played between father and son. Its highest form, the art of role-playing, is to forget the real world and embrace the fantasy invoked by the mind's eye, if only for a moment. It is so simple a child can do it, but the nature of the fantasy and its level of creative complexity can be so vast it can encompass the building of entire realities. Very evocative.
Yeah.
Very evocative, and there's not advice there, but he's telling you what you need to know. This is so easy, a child can do it. Just let go and let your imagination run free. And that's clearly what Ander did here. I think I've described this game, I think, to you before as imagination vomit. And that is exactly, it's just whatever is interesting, evocative.
Motherfucker, the goddamn camera. Boomer moment in the podcast. Continue.
Yep. But whatever makes sense or is exciting in the moment, throw it at the wall. Put it in there. There is a place for it. There is an area which you can fit it in that sort of makes sense for the world. That's the building block. Those are the building blocks of this game, is just getting out of your own way and letting your own creativity run rampant, taking the reins and seeing where it goes.
Yeah.
And I think...
And again, that I would qualify that within the confines of the sometimes incomprehensible logic of this game, of the world and the setting.
Yes.
So obviously
it does make sense.
You're not going to say, oh, unlimited imagination, I'm a truck driver. Like that does not exist in this game. So that being
you're
said,
absolutely right.
Yeah.
But I think, I think there's no better place to start about what's good in this game than what you're going to be interfacing with the most. Certainly as a player and as a GM for NPCs is the species. There are a ton of them. There are, I believe, 7 or 10, I don't remember, in the saga book. And there's many more, like a dozen or more in additional
there's way more than that.
Way more. Yeah, there has to be way more.
I mean, Monsters and Men, which is like the monster manual for this game, it's a monster manual. Like, you can definitely use it in the same way that you would a D&D monster manual, but they are all playable, every single one, even the really weird ones, which we will talk about. But there's like 50 species in that, I think.
Yeah.
And then you can, of course, make the degenerate crossovers. There was supposed to be an additional supplement called Menagerie, which was going to be what Andrew described as the weird shit, which is saying something.
Which begs the question. Yeah.
Which is saying something, considering how weird some of the stuff in this game is.
Yeah, but all of this, all of the species are, your player races. Which he rightly distinguishes as species. Are all or mostly all given a full, uncompromising, unapologetic look at what, based on this species creation story, what divinity made them, for what purpose they were made, and what history they had, what they'd be doing and where they would be in the world. Sometimes, a lot of times, to that species' own detriment. Many of the species are spiritually, politically, biologically opposed to other species. There's no regard for or advice for, bringing in, enemy species in the same party, and that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. You don't need to,
if you read the
bow
book
down
at all,
to playability.
If you read the book at all, you will realize immediately that there are certain species that cannot coexist with each other in a pickup game, or just like you can't throw them all together, because a lot of them, like many of them, are like committing genocide against each other. A lot of the more predatory species eat the other playable species as their primary diet.
You'll see over my shoulder, the guy peeking out on the saga book is that's an ogre in this world. So there are several species that the author is drawing from either standard fantasy tropes. A lot of the species are drawn from myths, different cultural myths. So everybody's heard of an ogre and has an idea of what that might look like in D&D or Pathfinder. They probably don't look like I can't get my they probably don't look like that guy. An 8 foot tall, hairless, red, and jacked dude, who's all masculinity and muscle and aggression. He has orcs in this game. The orcs are very different. They're not your rampaging sort of enemy species as you would get in a D&D game.
Very completely different.
Completely different.
And if
anything, they're the only one of the few possibly good guys.
I would say maybe they could be considered good guys in this game. But yeah, this game is known for being basically dark fantasy role playing. It is extremely grimdark. Like you were saying, like with these different playable species, they draw on all these different mythologies. And this game has like every mythology mashed into like a blender in it. It's fucking crazy. But it's like, I think when I made my review of this game, which I think is still up on this channel from a long time ago, I described it as like taking all these standard fantasy races and like ripping out their insides and replacing it with like a bunch of different guts. And so there's some common tropes that you'll see, but almost all of them are very different than any game that you've played. And it's the way in which all these species interact. Like we said, it makes it very hard to just mix them together in a party. It can be done, but the way in which you do that, you have to be very creative about it. And thankfully, this game gives you nothing but amazing creativity to draw from. Like we said, this book, 77 Thrones, it has in-depth write-ups on every single divinity and god within this world. And that is honestly, to me, where the majority of like the setting is in this game. The saga book itself has an incredible chapter called Geography that is kind of a tour of the world and just like different cities, different regions. And that chapter is so good, has so much fuel for games in it. It's just story hooks, just plot hook after plot hook after plot hook, things that you can just run with for a game. And then when you bring 77 Thrones into it, it's like you have unlimited games that you can run in this world, this crazy, crazy world. It really is like, if you are into using your imagination, this is just, it will turn the fire of your imagination into like this glorious bonfire. It's really, really great. I absolutely adore it. But like we said, there's a lot of good here. There is a lot of bad, and there is some incomprehensible. So I think that we should probably talk about the bad.
Yeah. I just want to
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
briefly dovetail off what you just mentioned to put a capstone on the good portion of.
I've actually got more to say about the good as well. So
yeah,
let's keep going.
Well, we may dip in and out,
Yeah.
but regardless, we've talked about previously, especially in our episode on alignment and morality, portraying a world, creating a world. If you're a GM, a world in which spirituality, gods, the divine, especially if it's a fantasy game, which this is alive and real in an on-the-ground, everyday level. And the world is sort of, it's very much similar in a lot of ways to Dark Souls, I would say. It's sort of a world which does not spoon-feed you what would you say, the retaining walls, the pillars which are holding up the
lore,
the aspects of the creative aspects of the world. You're left to infer them or let your imagination fill in the blanks from like a material standpoint. All of the species are presented to you in depth at face value. Many of them, like we both said, have political systems, have religious dogma, have, in some cases, just biological needs or differences which make them incompatible or natural enemies with other species. Cities are the exception rather than the norm. It's more of a low fantasy, more closer to Conan than it is to Forgotten Realms in terms of tech level. And so this world is presented to you, and you can't but draw natural conclusions or connections, by sort of inferring the logic of how this world runs itself. And when you overlay that, when you overlay that with the spirituality, the gods, the religion, which are very much a daily, undeniable, and intrinsic part of the world.
The gods will appear to their followers. Like, they take an active role in the world.
Yes.
And I guess maybe we should actually, not to cut you off, but something I do want to talk about is a little bit more about the setting and how we're describing it as very weird. It's the type of thing where the world is not a globe. It's not a flat plane. It's a cylinder floating in an infinite blackness. And the infinite blackness is Ahriman, the god of like the eternal darkness and night, who has these two peering eyes. The moons are the eyes of Ahriman. Yes. There's only a single star in the sky, and that is Elsam, his daughter.
Can also...
Yep, there she is.
Yep, up there. There's the star right there. The pink star.
And it's like gold and silver are not just naturally occurring elements. They are the blood of the elder creators, these primordial Titan-like beings. The gold is the sun was murdered by Ahriman. Ahura Mazda, the sun, is killed by Ahriman, and his body is dragged across the sky by, I can't remember which god.
All right, but his daughters.
Right, but when this terrible crime against reality happened, the blood of Ahura Mazda poured out onto the face of Kavega Thale, the world, and that is what gold is. Silver is the blood of Tehul, who's like basically the earth, I think, right? I can't remember. It's
god of death. No, earth is Damar.
Earth is Damar.
Stone.
Right.
Stone. Right. Stone. Yeah, stone is the blood of the elder creator, or the Titan of death.
Right.
The caves, the underworld is materially and figuratively, and spiritually, the underworld, where the dead go.
The Ring of Fire itself is one of these elder creators. It is Morgul, the thousand-faced flame. This giant, 1,000-foot high wall of flame that surrounds the world. Like they're the farther out from the center of this cylindrical world that you get, the hotter it gets because you're getting closer to more ghoul. The closer to the center that you get, the colder it's getting, because that's where the body of the Elder Creator Nif lies, who was the embodiment of cold and freezing. Like it's really wild and weird.
Yeah, it's hard to make it comprehensible in any way when you're talking about it, but you hear these names, or you read these names, the thousand-faced flame.
Yeah.
Ahura Mazda, the highest. Damar, the Earth King. All of these words and these names, and the description of the species. There are species which very similarly have a physical similarity to dwarves, you might say, but there's a completely different lore and a reason why they are the way they are. They're the people of iron. They can't swim because their body, their flesh, their blood is so filled. They're massively heavier than a creature of their size might be, and they all wear beards because
and they will, if dropped in the water, they will sink and drown.
They will sink.
Yeah,
they cannot swim.
They cannot swim. They are basically stone in that
exactly.
for all intents and purposes in the water.
Yeah. See, you read things like this, and it just makes the imagination go wild. Like, okay, what would a world be like with all of these peoples and these gods, and what would it be like to play one? You have a very incredibly militarized, disciplined species that looks aesthetically to your Githyanki perhaps, but they're imagine like Roman-esque soldiers, or a species whose society is governed by a militaristic hierarchy to the nth degree, and sort of amped up with the discipline and the violence and the brutality, and they have the most advanced technology. They're the only ones who can wield steel in this world. Okay, what natural things come to mind when all of these people are together, and they have very antagonistic faiths?
And they a lot of them are totally fine with slavery and enslaving people who are not them.
Yes.
It's a brutal world, and some of the more interesting portions of like the lore and the species is you look at like the ogres and these two kind of, I would say, stand-ins for elves of some kind, a little bit.
Yes.
The Freyines and the Mihangi, they're all like fairy species.
Light elves and dark elves,
right? For lack of a better, very simplistically, light elves and dark elves. Although the Kelfar might be more closer to dark elves than the Mihangi. But essentially, these are all, even though they are technically, you would consider them like your elf species, they're all fairy species. They're fae. They're creation of the dream, So like you have the Mihangi are known as the wolf fairies. They're these incredibly psychotically dangerous, carnivorous predators that were created by Ajira, the god of nightmares. You have the
hunt and eat people.
Yeah, who hunt and eat people.
Other sapient races
who are in this like death battle against the Freyines, who are the exact opposite. It's a matriarchal society. Their skin will glow with like a golden light as they that follows almost their like emotional state. And you have the god of nightmares creates the Mihangi, the god of like tranquility
daydreams
and daydreams creates this other species. And at some point in the history, two tribes of each one try to bury the hatchet and make peace between themselves. So they marry two of their children to each other as a symbol of peace and alliance. And of course, nobody fucking goes for that. Their entire species turns on them. Their gods turn on them and curse them, and they become the dark elves. They are cast out of the dreaming to live under the earth and pursue, I don't know, slavery and
like and
commerce. Like it's
commerce. They're uber capitalist.
Yeah, uber capitalist, purple-skinned primates.
Yeah, and who all live subterranean existences.
Right.
So you have stuff like this.
It's really
weird.
wild. Yeah, it's weird and it's wild.
The humanoid arachnid species that's one of the most advanced species in terms of like civilization and culture.
It's so weird.
Yeah, who are very, very I don't know if we could say this word on YouTube. Very
just say it and I'll cut
very
it.
Very much like I guess mid-century Germans in their worldview. Their sort of a desire for tyrannically overlording over and rightly so. Yeah. And humans, the most interesting, diverse in the best way, and the most based
in the cool and
species.
interesting based way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 77, one for each deity, part of the creation story. The god of humanity took a portion of the aspect of all the different gods, the 77 other gods, and imbued them into these 77 tribes of humanity. And they're very different. They have 77 different ethnicities, and some of them are stand-ins similar to real world, but others blue-skinned humans, humans with green hair, or are exceptionally tall, or have pupilless red eyes.
Yeah. And they're such a new species that some of the first humans are still alive. Like they're the new kid on the block, and they're breeding very quickly, and they're the most kind of dynamic, and their patron god Palgan created them. His heraldry is like an ant, and so it's like they're spreading like insects almost.
Yeah.
And displacing other species, and it's just fucking wild and rad.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Awesome.
But the entire thing is, this is all so fantastic in like the fantasy sense. In the it is the most fantastic setting I've ever come across. But the entire thing, the entire ethos of the game is taking it seriously.
Correct.
And getting into an immersive roleplay style. And this was something, this game had kind of a very brief moment of kind of an explosion of popularity among the immersive gaming crowd on YouTube when it came out. And there's still people playing it and still obsessed with it 10 years later. It's really, really wild. And this is one of the reasons we were so attracted to it, was because it's like, oh my God, a game that like the whole thing is like to take it a little seriously and to roleplay. That's amazing.
Yeah. And the world doesn't imply there are no the world isn't presented in a way in which there's like a mundane overarching threat, a la I don't know, Lord of the Rings or something. There's no dark overlord as such.
There's 77
many dark overlords.
And you serve one of them.
You could serve one of them. There's no it's not the morality of the world it's a subjective morality done well. If you are playing a Mihangi, you are unapologetically worshiping one of these dark, to our real world morality, a pretty reprehensible deity of torture and nightmares and fear and
lies,
all these things. But that is your world. That is what and who created you. And so there's no implicit dungeons in the world. No. Like dungeon crawling is not really assumed. And so you create story hooks or seeds for a saga is you look at the world as it is, and you look at all the the sort of spirituality and the religion, which is directly and significantly informing day-to-day philosophy and worldview of regular people. And okay, what would naturally happen? A lot of the games that I've ran and I've played in this world, they tend to be very low. They don't always have to be, but tend to be very like grounded situations. A gang of urchins, or just people in a village, in a community. One person is a blacksmith. One person is a newcomer who's just come to the village. One is the son or the daughter of a magistrate or a shaman. And what are naturally, given where this village is and the people and species who live there, what kind of drama would naturally, organically take place? And it's so good. And it's so much more immersive.
And it's like, talk about filling out a map. That game, there's so much shit that you can run into, do anything. And this is a game that there's no classes at all. Like it's skill based. And when you make a character, like the idea of a character class even being a consideration, it's not something that's even in your mind, because you're just like, I want, like, what kind of you will find something in either the species itself or in combination of the species and the god and the geography you're gonna come up with a person that lives in this world, and then something's gonna happen. It can't not.
You have mechanical values on your sheet, different passions for love, for hate. You have a mechanical value for your level of piety. Everybody has a level of piety, regardless of whether you're a priest or not, whether you're a shaman in the service of a particular god or elder creator. Because just like real world, especially in a pre-modern time, everybody gives worship, everybody gives praise to one or more gods, deities, divinities, and having such a forward-facing, such a sort of large and bombastic, essentially a morality system through these gods and their dogma, it makes fleshing out someone from a particular community very quick, very easy, and very just so many ideas.
And you will have something unique.
Yes.
Like I have never seen a Within the Ring of Fire character that resembled any other Within the Ring of Fire character. They're all different. And that is kind of a testament to, I think, Anders' imagination vomit, his incredible output of imaginative content. It's just really kind of mind-blowing in that sense. And like I said, the first chapter of Saga Book is called Roleplaying. It is about what is role-playing. He does have some GM advice in there, but it's all dead set on setting the tone. And this is something I didn't even think about this until just now, but that book, it sets the tone for the entire game of this is dark, immersive fantasy role-playing, and that's the focus. And we said, like in our very first episode, talking about how do you make a good game is setting the intention on things. And I think that directly comes from Within the Ring of Fire and from Saga Book in particular, where it's just like, we're all here to role play because this is how you get these incredible experiences. I mean, like Ander has so many hilarious turns of phrase that are not in the book, but his YouTube personality is absolutely hilarious. Like it's like professional wrestling, intellectual role playing,
80s wrestling, 80s metal,
but like mixed with like hardcore RPG philosophy. And he'll say things like you don't get to take the +5 sword of booty slaying with you. You take the memories of these games. And that's I think exactly what we're looking for out of our games is like the
Yes.
things that you remember 2 decades later after that game session. It's never how much damage you did. It's never, what armor I was wearing or anything like that. It's the wild and crazy immersive experience you had at the table. And so to that, it just knocks it out of the park in that sense.
Yeah.
It's a, like I said, very weird, very awesome game that we love very much.
Yeah.
But unless you have more praise to heap on it, I
think
we'll be here forever if we don't.
We've waxed poetically. I think
right.
For as evocative, as good, as unique, as personality driven as the game is, it definitely has its flaws.
Yeah.
Because anything that is so what would you say? So soaked in like the personality of the author, their own obsessions and their own interests and their own perspective. Let's say, you see the peaks and the valleys. And this book was, as far as I understand, he had some editing help and some some additional people help in some regard, but this is, as far as I understand, basically entirely written by one guy.
Yeah.
By one person. And so there are definitely some pitfalls. One of the biggest of which is that so the game uses a 2d8 die mechanic. Fair enough, easy to understand.
Yeah. 8s explode.
8s explode.
Ones,
very cool. Everybody likes that.
Suppress the exploding 8. So
critical failure if you roll 2 1s. However, glaringly, there's no mention whatsoever as to what any target number is, what a success
what
is.
Qualifies as a success.
What qualifies as a success at all. So you're left to sort of infer what and sort of make up your own rubric in your mind as to what is a standard success, a difficult success, how to add modifiers. It is not given any page count whatsoever.
There's a mechanic in it known as boost that is kind of critical to how the game runs, and it's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. It's basically like oh my god, there goes the camera again. God damn it.
Yeah. But
you can
and correct me if I'm misremembering anything for boost. It's primarily not exclusively, but it often comes into play in combat scenarios or scenes where you get a roll X number, X amount higher than what the target number was, the target's AC or what have you. And the more you boost by, if I remember correctly, each weapon has like a boost number. It might be 3. It might be. I think usually it's 5. If I remember correctly.
The standard boost is 5. So if the target number is 10 and you roll 20, you boosted twice.
Yes.
And so the boost, in terms of what it does in combat, is that the more that you boost, it's like an additional point of damage every time that you boost. If you get 3 or more boosts, that also does damage to people's armor. So an armor does damage reduction in this game.
Correct. Yep.
But it's so like certain types of weapons have a lower boost rating, which means it's much easier to get these a much more additional damage. But the boost mechanic, it works. It's like we said, it's 2d8 across the board for everything, plus attribute modifier and skill, versus a target number that's not defined, and its boost is used across the board everywhere. But it's so target numbers never really explained from what I can remember. Boost never explained. And you might be asking yourselves, how do you know how the boost mechanic works? And it's like, this was part of the weird thing about this game, was that it had been in development for a long time, and Ander has a fairly big following. I think he's got like 7,000 or 8,000 subscribers on YouTube at this point. And it was him doing playtests and talking about the game, explaining the mechanics. So we all knew how the system worked before we even got the game, and then we got the game and we were like, huh? So, but we were able to jump in and play immediately because we knew what everything was.
Yes.
But it was kind of like
you had to infer it from the context of watching him do it, or listening, or watching him talk about it.
Which was not intentional. I think this stuff was meant to be in the book, but
yes, it just got missed.
Same
thing with there's a mechanic called speed factor, which is supposed to be, I think, or it's just speed, speed, and it's some abstraction about your movement, I think.
Yeah, and the only reason I know that is because I asked someone about it in a Facebook group who had been watching his videos forever, and they explained it. But yeah, you have all the, based on certain attributes and stuff, you calculate this speed value. They tell you how to calculate the speed value, and then it's literally never mentioned again in the book. I was kind of like, what is this for? and it's an abstraction on like how quick your character moves. So if you get in a foot race with someone, you guys roll 2d8, whatever explodes, everything, you just add that to your speed, and whoever's the higher number, that's the person who's faster, who wins the race.
Yep.
Not explained in the book.
There are certain miracles and spells and effects which affect your speed value, which are not, again,
it's like what
things which were missed. So for as good as drifting away from mechanics, I don't have any other mechanical things to say, but you see behind us these cover images, and especially 77 Thrones. That art is beautiful.
Yeah,
it's incredibly evocative. That like Matt and I mentioned, you have. Once you read the book, you see certain aspects of the setting implied there. There's the eyes of Ahriman, sort of this existential, nihilistic threat. This elder creator of darkness. That bat-winged woman is El Sam. She's
god
very
of
much
jealousy, envy, and
spite and self-loathing and guilt.
That's right. Yeah.
Very much. I would say sort of a lore character. She's a god, but regardless, the art in all of these books is very hit or miss. Some of it, especially the landscape paintings, the scene pictures, very good, very evocative, especially because you have these very weird geographic areas. There's a place called the Blue Ocean, which is this endless Sahara or Badlands like expanse with blue, like sapphire blue sand, and these colossal bones of a dead deity. But some of the art is really rough, rough.
Like, so bad that I remember some of it 10 years later and I still laugh. There's a couple of pieces that they're just not good. And if the strength of the material was not there, it would be really, really unfortunate.
Very, very off-putting. Some art looks...
Some of it, it's
goofy.
Like some of it's good, but a lot of it's like really weird. And I feel like by the time you got to Book of True Names, there was more of a consistent style. But if you look at Saga Book over there, like there's like not a unified style to this at all. It's just all over the place and of completely varying quality. It's really,
again, a factor of one man doing the job and
relying,
trying to get.
I think relying on basically friends and whoever wanted to contribute to this thing that he was doing.
Project.
It's like he was not dumping money into this.
Right.
He's a family man, and like this was a product of pure distilled passion.
Yes.
And in some cases, in for the most part, that was incredible because you got this amazing setting, this evocative, imaginative, crazy mess that doesn't make any sense, but somehow does make sense and does work.
And just some of the art did not match
Yeah.
it, but the writing saved it. I remember.
Oh, for sure.
In 77 Thrones, there's an entry for all of the divinities in that book, and each, just like in a Forgotten Realms or Pathfinder, each deity has like a holy symbol that is sort of featured prominently at the start of their entry, and one of them. So Ajira, Matt, you mentioned the god of nightmares. The art for the symbol for that there's this stock Google image of a wolf head just sort of like a snarling, or like its mouth open, and it was just filled in over with like colorized. It was just traced over. It's so clearly that another one of the god's symbols is a Tuhul, that the god of death, is a crown of worms. Something very evocative when you hear it. The elder creator of death, who bears this crown of worms, and the art the art for the crown of worms, like, you would not know what that is if you didn't read somewhere down the crown of worms. It just looks like a bunch of sort of colored pencil squiggles.
Yeah.
Pink.
Oh, I do remember which one you're talking about. Yeah. Oh, man.
So the art is very, very hit or miss. Be prepared for that. But that's also, again,
that's
it's
part
the
of
peaks
the
and
charm
valleys.
at this point.
It's part of the charm of it. But let's not beat around the bush. Some of the art truly blows.
Bad. Yeah, some of it's bad. There's one piece in Monsters and Men. I won't say what it is, but if you get of Monsters and Men and you go through that book, you'll know immediately which piece is the one that I'm talking about. It's just kind of like, whoa, this doesn't fit at all.
But uncanny valley image of of one of these species you can play as.
But
go ahead.
And I was going to say, in terms of the bad, a lot of it was, for me, the lack of mechanical detail, that if you had not been in that sphere of YouTube at that time,
if you didn't know the deep lore,
if you bought this book, you'd be like, how the fuck do I play this game? You could probably figure it out, but it would take a while. You might have to make some stuff up. So that I think was the biggest weakness for me. But there's also some stuff in it that is just so weird. So I think for now we can probably move on to the incomprehensible.
I just want to add one thing. So that's your main gripe, I would say. My main gripe, and this will probably dovetail into the incomprehensibility of some of the aspects of the setting. Again, because this is a one-man job, and so much of the author's passion was just hurled into this.
Yeah.
There are some things which Ander clearly likes, and some things which he doesn't like, and there are some core aspects of the world, of the gods, of the lore, of the setting information, which were not given enough page count or enough word count, I should say. Again, the lady on the front cover of 77 Thrones, Elsam, she has a big write-up, and she should. She's a big character in the world, and you can tell that Ander likes that character. There's other species and gods which have a noticeably slimmer word count to them. And some of that is fine. But there are certain aspects of the world which, running under its own logic, from my standpoint, needed to be provided with more information, more context. There's a pantheon or an alliance of deities called the Enforcers in this world, which are a very major player on the world stage, certainly in the regional world stage in certain areas. and they're not presented like a meaningful and competent spiritual force or an alliance of deities. There's really very little information, and that information is all secondhand. And leading me, I'll end my critique at this point. By far, from my standpoint, the biggest letdown in this game line is in Book of True Names, which is your arcane, your magical book. It was the last book to come out, something I was looking forward to tremendously. I'm someone who very much likes magic in a fantasy world, and I really liked it in the setting of Within the Ring of Fire, because in a very prominent theme is a sort of a war between gods who represent mysticism, divine magic, you might say, and trolls. Trolls are not they're not a monster species in the same way you'd see in the Forgotten Realms. They're these kind of godlike immortal entities in and of themselves. They're sort of on that level.
There are 44
like divine.
Yeah, like there are 77
44
deities.
Yes.
There are 44 immortal trolls. These are beings that will never die, can never die, and can't even be killed.
Yes, and they're the ones who sort of created magic as it is known in the world, and it can be very difficult to play. Not difficult, but it bears consideration because being a magic user in this world is in most parts of the world it's heavily persecuted.
Yeah.
And you will be
verboten,
killed on sight or tortured. Yeah. It's a very difficult thing. So, but there's no information about the trolls. There's no information about how or why magic came into being, even though there's very good rules and sort of quote-unquote spells, different paths of magic. It's presented in a very unique way, very evocative. I like all that. But to not have any contextual information for me as the flame tender to continue to get story seeds like you and I both mentioned from 77 Thrones, and for me as a player character who wants to portray mage, I felt like I really needed to know that information, and it just wasn't provided, and that was a real letdown.
Excuse me. And on that point, so in terms of like what you would call like clerical magic, anything that is taking from the divine from 77 Thrones, that book opens with about 20 pages that should have been in the saga book, in my opinion. But it's lays out the kind of different clerical paths you can take, whether it's being a priest, a shaman, these different kind of archetypes, and how whichever divinity that you are worshiping, they have some aspect, whether it's light, darkness, fire, like all these different paths. It has those general clerical abilities that are tied to the more kind of highest level conceptual and elemental forces,
like your domain. Your
domain, you might say. Whereas within each entry on each god, each one of those has their own specific clerical path of magic, basically powers that they can draw on as you gain in level, or status as it's called in this game. And so that magic is tied into this divinity. It is tied into the beliefs that your character has in that divinity. And this is one of the great things about 77 Thrones. It's like, what's the religious garb you wear? What are the things that you actually believe and promote? What are the sins that this god does not tolerate? All of this stuff. And I hadn't even thought of it until we had discussed this, a couple months ago when you brought this up, that you're right. The magic system, you have these different paths of magic in Book of True Names, but they're completely decoupled from anything else. They're not like, there is no write-up on the 44 trolls. I hadn't even considered that. And when you said that, I was like, oh man, you're totally right.
Yeah. And it was really needed.
Yeah.
in my view. So, but Ander is still out there, and
Yeah.
hope is not
Yeah,
hope is not
exactly.
completely lost.
Maybe,
Maybe.
Unless
Less,
the
but
last
maybe.
book was True Names. Unless, come on, Andrew.
Less.
But and I would say one more thing: the trolls being these kind of like crazy godlike spiritual entities, they did have progeny, and so there are trolls as monsters in the world. And the kind of way in which they are monsters is they have been cursed basically for all time, that their progeny would be extremely long-lived. They're not quite immortal, but their minds develop extraordinarily slowly. So they are these brutish beasts. It takes them hundreds of years to hit puberty even. They are in like in D&D nigh indestructible. They come in completely different forms, like weird. Like some of them are like insect line.
There are different types of trolls.
Yeah, it's
I think 4 different types of trolls.
it's really crazy, and they are spirits, but they can manifest physically. Like it's very bizarre, very weird.
Yes.
No fantasy trope has been left unmolested in this game. And there's
accurate verbiage.
yeah, I mean it's funny that you're talking about like the things that you can tell Andor really likes in the game. And it's like the ogres, like they're fucking awesome. They're like hyper masculine, like we eat and we kill and we rape, and then it's like he's like, okay, but I got to put something in there for the girls, so we'll baby, we'll make the Freynes, the
Freynes, we'll make these cat people.
When they get happy, their faces glow, and the women control everything, and the dudes wear makeup. And
complete inversion.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Again, it's like I can imagine. It's just. All right, that's cool as fuck. Like throw it in there. Like again, and it's some more. It's all.
This is
the game is very memeable.
It's super
which is a strength and a failing.
Yeah, it is a strength and a failing. It's the thing is, if you play this game and you get into it, you will come up with like your own lore of memes and things, because there's so much creativity and there's so much weird stuff in this that it's just so memorable. Like I can't.
Yeah, I already have the personalities of so many of the gods.
Yeah,
and some of the world NPCs in my mind, because they're very these are all like they're, especially the gods, are written like wrestling characters. They're just a gimmick and a personality just amped so much, like so the knob
high.
Breaks off.
Yeah, exactly. It's just completely overdrive on everything, distortion, just like heavy metal, fucking like nothing. There is nothing mundane and nothing boring in this game.
And this is not a gonzo setting. This all makes sense. This all works in the setting. It's just the setting is the volume is so loud.
And it's so loud and it's so weird, but it's still like you said, it's not gonzo like at all. There is kind of a consistency and logic to everything. And I love that. I love it so much.
And I think that's a good segue into like the weird batshit.
Yeah, the really fucking weird. You know what?
That makes no sense.
You goddamn piece of shit. All right, come on. Okay, I'm back.
You mentioned one of them. It's weird, and it's unfortunately kind of goofy looking. In the image on the reverse cover of 77 Thrones, you see the world, the cylinder world, and the picture of it just doesn't match the evocative. It looks pretty fucking goofy.
Yeah.
I get it. I get where it all comes from, but. Especially when you see that image, it's hard. It can be hard sometimes to take it seriously.
Yeah.
The calendar in this world.
That's the worst thing about the art. That's the worst thing about the art is it makes this game that you
it undermines. Yeah.
It undermines the seriousness and the serious tone and the whole foundation that has built the game. and you see some of the art, and it's like, what?
What the fuck is that?
It's like
it's not what I had in my mind.
Yeah.
What I thought was much cooler.
Yeah.
Or weirder.
Yeah.
Another thing, the calendar. There's no years in this. There's cycles. There's 77. Yeah. There's 77 gods, and so there's a day for every god, and it's cool. Makes sense. Very much
it's
like
mythologically, it's really fucking
mythologically
cool.
It makes sense. It's just unfortunately when you think about organizing cities and empires in like a 2.5 month year.
Yeah, it's literally it's like each day is ruled over by one of the 77 deities, and so the amount of daylight and darkness is determined by the properties of that god. And since there's 77 of these things and it repeats, it just goes in that circle over and over and over again. You have what's called a cycle, which is 77 days, and the last 3 days of it are the three like deities of
the
darkness,
deities, the most dark deities.
So you get 3 straight days of total utter darkness. There is no sunlight, and then you get a day of 24 hours of sunlight after that when the sun comes back on the day
a day of 24 hours of dawn light.
Yeah,
like pink illumination.
Oh yeah, that's right.
A day of dawn. Elsam is also on the cover as the goddess of dawn. That pink star you see there, it illuminates everything. For high gods of the sun and the children of the sun, you have like several days of complete light, or like 23 hours of light. You have a day towards the end of the year that's 24 hours of sort of dusk light.
Yeah.
Twilight. So again, very evocative, very cool. When you think about it, like, and all of the age range from humanity to all the species, it's given in cycles, which it makes sense. It's taking the world seriously, but
it's like, how old is your character?
I remember having like a factor, like a multiplication factor. It's like 5 point whatever. You multiply the number of cycles someone is, or you divide the year value you want someone to be to get their number of cycles. It's just hard to imagine.
And it's like 7 days is a chain. There's 11 chains in a cycle. Like there's all these weird and like what you were saying at the very beginning, it's like, how do you organize a society or anything based on this wacky calendar? Like
like even from like seasons. A human 2.5 months is not long enough even for like, again, like a cyclical nature of like holidays or festivals. Like, you're doing things all the fucking time. Like it just doesn't work. You know what I mean?
How do you like farm and like plant
like
crops
if you had your birthday and if you had like Christmas every 2.5 months, like it doesn't work really, but again, fuck it. It's sort of, it is what it is. It's one of these wacky things that doesn't make, if you think about it too much or if you stare at it too long, pieces don't quite fit together, but they are cool.
They are cool. There's you had mentioned when we were talking about selecting the topic and we started riffing on this, the fact that like there's usually several gods that kind of overlap on the same thing that they represent. Like one of my favorite deities is Laptif, the god of lies. And you reminded me after I said that yes, but there's also the god of lying.
Exactly.
There's one of the aspects.
Like this is another like things which the author really liked. Like there's a god in this called He Who Has Many Names. Very evocative. Very much like the devil,
like Luciferian,
Lucifer,
the devil
even
figure.
though Elsam also, who's on the cover, kind of fills in that thematic role
but he
as
fills
well.
in, I think, very much like the role of Satan, but also giving Satan an understandable character goal as well. Even though he also has
like 3 times as many like domains than someone else might have, because that's what Andrew likes.
Because and I can't blame him on that, because I love it. He Who Has Many Names. He's a great god and a great
character.
Great character in the world. made an appearance in my first game, Hell and Back. But yeah, it's like you have the god of lies, the god of lying.
How are these differentiated all?
Yeah, and some of the playable species are so bizarre and so out there. Like there's the slugmen.
They're presented as like one of the few minor species. I don't. It's just the art is actually good for that one because it looks so goofy. Like I've never gotten to play one, but I will. But you know, you have some species which you wonder why any page count was given to them. There's one incredibly weird species called the Maratuk. They're like long and spindly. And they have these weird, I don't remember if it's like a weird like beard or they have these tentacles hanging down from their mouths, but there's only like, they've been so genocided and fucked over, there's only like 50 of them left.
Yeah. Which is like, why is this included?
Yeah.
They'll all be dead.
Yeah, they all should be dead. They all should be world characters or NPCs at this point. There's some species that are so fucked up and reprehensible, and they don't ever show up except for the deepest depths of the underworld. There's an evil race called the Cherry, and they're just riddled with disease. Sort of dracoid pig creatures that everybody universally hates, and they also hate everybody else and can't get along with basically anything, and they keep to themselves. Very weird. There's a species of sort of the stand-in for this world's dwarves, which are called Ferrum. A race of them that are all completely, irrevocably insane in various ways. And I remember I played...
What are they called again?
The Infracti.
The Infracti. Yeah.
Yeah, they all... I forget what their... I think their creation story, they I don't remember how it happened, but they fell into worship of one of these dark deities who's like God. I think the goddess of, it's like the mother of monsters. She's like the goddess of mutation and like deformity and madness and like I don't know, like it just completely insane. The god is like, her personality herself is described as insane. And they all followed her to the bottom of the bottom of the cylinder, and now just hold these sort of blood orgies, just inbreeding into like a genetic oblivion, creating these mutations in her name.
The art for that, I really liked the art for that though, because they do look really crazy. They're like, ah.
Yeah, I think it's holding like a bloody rock or something.
Yeah, it's like they're completely hairless, you know. And you can play as one.
Yeah, and I did.
And Nick did.
I think it is still online, not on my friend Elias's channel. He ran a whole saga, and I remember when he pitched it to me.
This is like 30 or 40 sessions or something, right? Like
it's it's not like a 3 to 5 session.
This was not just like a pickup game. Like this was the within the Ring of Fire era of YouTube role playing, which was like, no, we're sitting down and we're taking this
seriously.
We're taking the Infracti seriously, and we're gonna play this fucking game.
Yeah. The first scene of the first session, the GM had, my character was playing a necromancer, and like kind of this noble or the son of a noble family, so he was actually in high status. This crazy hillbilly, fucked up cave people, Morlock community, and he had like. Or three players, and he had someone pertinent to all someone close to all the different characters being being dragged out in front of the town for heresy, to be ritually tortured and murdered, and it was my character's wife who was still pregnant with my character's child, and like, okay, like I didn't know anything about this. He just sort of sprung it on me. Like, okay, I'm fucking crazy. He's a zealous follower of this goddess, and like I just went in on it and just eyes bulging, just frothing at the mouth, castigating, just throwing stones at her as well, and I just chastising her for besmirching the blood of our unborn child. And I reclaimed my namesake right from her flesh as she was taken away. Just absolute insanity. That has no doubt gotten me on some government list. That game devolved in the most hilarious and atrocious ways. At some point, my character believed he was going even more insane, but not the good kind. Seeing things from other spirits and deities were trying to trick me. So I remember I was in this sacred cave of magic power, and again ranting in these sort of mad visions. I had like the end of Taxi Driver. I impaled my eyes on two stalagmites and blinded myself, ripping my own eyes out, which somehow didn't kill me, and I still played that game for like 10 more sessions. But that's the kind of insanity, but it was high octane. As crazy as it was, literally and figuratively, everybody was in it. And that's an extreme, wild example.
But that's in the game. Like that's
in
the
the
thing
game.
is like, this is the stuff that's like, this is the incomprehensible weirdness of this game.
Yeah, something that would not be tolerated or given any. Doing that in the Forgotten Realms.
I know. This is like the most problematic fucking game that's ever been made. It's like, they all rape, and they all rape, genocide, and
they all eat each other. All of humanity is uniformly polygamous.
Yeah.
They increase in status the more wives they have.
Yeah. It's their religious duty to be polygamous and to spread humanity,
spread their seed throughout the world, and brutally subjugate, conquer, enslave, and murder all the other races in the name of humanity.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so
very
good.
Based.
Yeah, extremely based and imagination build. Oh my god. Oh god, it's so good. So, there's a lot of other really, really fucking wild shit in that game.
Weird shit. But that's what this game is.
Yeah.
And that's what this game does well. It was not written by committee.
No.
There's huge parts of it which make, if you think about it too long, they make no fucking sense.
Yeah.
There are gaps in world and in the lore, but there's enough there, and it's presented in such a unique way that doesn't provide any concessions, any apologies, any limitations to taking the creative impetus of the world and the people in it and taking them to their to their logical conclusions.
Yeah.
And the world is just what organically comes to play, which the real world is a mess as well. It doesn't fit together on a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
And this world also does not fit together. It has rounding errors. It has inconsistencies. It has
missing math operators.
Missing broken formulas. Yeah.
Yeah.
The VLOOKUP is not feeding to the pivot table properly. Like it's not. But goddamn, is it not? If it's not evocative,
it's so fucking fun. And this is one of the things where like we had talked about in a previous episode where we were saying, if you don't have these like really well fleshed out mechanical world building tools and random tables and all of this stuff, then the way that you have a good sandbox game is to have a really strong setting and a really opinionated setting. And this is probably
Yes.
the most opinionated.
The most opinionated setting.
Yeah, most opinionated setting that I've ever had. And this was why I was kind of like when people were talking about GM burnout, like a long time ago, I used to get GM burnout when I was doing the Rails plot thing.
Correct.
Like that is the path to burning out. But this is a game where I never had, outside of one exception, which was sort of my fault because I was relying on the players too much. Like it was literally just like, you know, I'll say something in the beginning and then the game will happen. They'll do everything, you know, like outside of that this one session that I ran that I had to cut short. It was probably like 2.5 hours long. Cause I kind of backed myself into a mental corner. Outside of that, I never didn't have an idea at any moment.
Yeah.
Like there is just so much in this game and so much creativity that it's impossible to not have something next, or like, you know, like, or to have something happen. Just, I mean, literally, it just, depending on what species you are, walking into a certain region, there's shit's gonna happen. Like
shit's gonna
there's
happen.
going to be conflict. This game is nothing but conflict.
Yes,
it's awesome. So,
and again, this breeds character ideas. It breeds drama. I remember one of my favorite characters. It was in your very brief, short-lived game.
Yeah.
It was. I forget what the name was. Edge of Nightmares.
End of Nightmares. Yeah.
End of Nightmares. It was taking place. We're all playing bad guys, right? It's in the dark
game
forest
is set
of fear.
The dark forest of fear is where it's taking place. Yeah.
Yeah, where all these nightmare fae live, these Mihangi. My character was a light fae, these Freyin, it was a gray, which is exactly as you imagine, just
the gray alien. Yeah.
An alien, like the grays, like UFOs. At shapeshift, they're like this world's doppelgangers. Gray masquerading as a light elf, masquerading as a nightmare elf.
Yeah.
And this
this
wretched witch is caked in mud and these unguents to mask the scent, because that light elves give off
this
sort
potent,
of delicious scent to the Mihangi. So it's slathering on
them.
just like
they consider the blood of the light fae as fae wine. They get
like
psychosexual pleasure out of
like
causing them fear and eating them. It's like this is a game that reminds me so much of the ethos of like, it's not setting wise, it's not like Conan, but it reminds me of the feel, the life, the sense of life that Conan has, where it's like
the vitality of
the vitality and the, you know, you have this giant like thing of grapes and you just squeeze it and the juice just pours out. You know, like that's the entire
live for today. You know, like especially with some of these species.
Everything deeply. You know, like and oh god, it's so good.
Yeah, it's really great. And again, you know, looping back into it, because faith and piety is such, like it would be in a sword and sorcery setting, like it would be in a pre-modern, what would you say, a setting of antiquity, a pagan worldview where the world is alive with gods and spirits and demons, and these things are real. And regardless of what the mechanics say, the mechanics say you can actually do magic, but it is unambiguous. There's no question in everyone's mind that the omen that the witch doctor said is true, that dream that you had is portentous, that the priest can lay on hands, you know, that the saint of this god can heal you by laying on hands. It's not. This is a game. Just trying to make sure I'm correct in this before I want to say this is a game that is without. You take the world seriously, it is a world bereft of cynicism. That's so refreshing. You know, the way world, the game is written way. If you go back and you watch Andrew's videos, they're still there on his
Yeah, and they're
channel,
great. He's got
WWAD.
yeah.
You
He's
lean into
also
it. You
in
lean
our
into
like
the
featured
gimmick.
channels on this. If you go to our channel page, his channel is in that featured channel section.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely my this might be my favorite game.
It's
the
really
game
high up the list.
It's really, if it's not number one, it's number two.
It's a game that I will play forever.
Yes, it's a game I will play forever. And
I haven't played it in a
run
while,
forever.
but it's a game. Yeah, I've still got the only two physical books I got were Saga Book and 77 Thrones. You can still get these on drive-thru RPG.
Yes,
it's still there, still selling them. So I recommend it. Obviously, get it with the PDF. You want the PDF as well, but
yes,
it is a wild game. It is not for everybody, but it's something that has produced more of these immersive, memorable moments than any other game that I've ever played.
Yeah.
More than Vampire, more than anything, more than anything I've played. So, and it's so
more than exactly.
And it's not, and we played a shitload of that for like 5 or 6 years, and then I took a break from role playing. But it's a game that I will play again and again.
Again. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a testament to the quality of the work of Ander, even though it is, like we said, a very flawed gem. It's something I will play forever. So
that's
maybe the highest compliment you can give to an RPG, in my opinion.
It's and yeah, I would also encourage you, like we were saying, if you don't want to spend the money yet, first off, you only want if you're only going to buy one, buy 77 Thrones.
Yes.
But if you're still, if we have just baffled and confused you and have made no sense, but you're curious, go back and watch the old videos on Andrew's channel, especially the playtest. The playtest is still out there, or even on this channel.
Yeah,
watch Hell and Back. Yeah,
and Ander is in these games as well, hamming it up, and it was a lot of fun. I will say that first game, Hell and Back, that was one of the first online games for this that had been run. And when Ander,
I think it was the first, apart from his playtest.
Apart from his playtest, oh okay.
I believe it was.
So apart from that, I had a couple of players who, we were kicking around in these Facebook groups. Someone was like, I want to play this, but does anyone want to run it? And I was like, yeah, I want to run this game. Got a couple of guys. Ander got wind of this and kind of messaged me, or I messaged him. I don't remember which. We're kind of feeling each other out. And he was like, yeah, I'm interested in playing. So I didn't tell the other guys. And I had a session 0 with him and his friend Jenny, who was also amazing. She unfortunately had to drop out about halfway through the game. So I played her character as an NPC for the rest of the game. But I had their session 0 together, and it was like awesome. Ander was like, I'm in. He's like, you were firing on all cylinders. And then when we opened that game, like everybody gets in the chat room, then I sent the link to Ander and he pops in, and they were all like kind of freaking out. They're like, oh shit, like the guy who made the game is here. And there was this sense of like everybody was like instantly more invested than they already were. And if you go and you watch it, it's a fun game. There's some campfire D&D type moments where everybody's talking in character for extended periods of time. It may have gone a little too far in that respect, but it was this thing that everyone had been looking for at that time, and everyone stepped on the gas on that. So it was great. And again, it's like ancient webcams, ancient microphones, played over Google Plus. It was, before even Critical Role had come out. This was just the shit that we were doing, and it was so much fun. And that game, it has its flaws, but it was an incredibly engaging experience, and it had a great ending. And it was a fucking ride. Like that campaign, that saga, excuse me, not campaign. I don't want to use the wrong term here. That campaign, saga was it was like high octane, fucking adrenaline, pedal to the fucking metal. And at the end, like I remember at the end of that session, everyone was just like, at the end of that game, just like, holy shit, that was something.
And that game was spurred on just by reading a blurb on one of the sites of interest.
Yeah.
In the geography section.
One little section of the geography, and I was like,
fill in the rest.
I know how I'm gonna and I was like, this is an opportunity where I can have people play all the various different races, any race they want, and I can still have it work and be compatible. And it definitely did, and everyone took their characters seriously, and they took them seriously in ways that, you know, did not keep the party together, so to speak. It's it was so much fun. It was so much fun.
Yeah, very much so. Very high praise. Very we've said before, personality goes a long way, and ultimately trumps everything else. And that's very much the case here. A game with dripping with personality. So I think we've said all we need for the moment. Perhaps we'll return back. There's definitely a multitude of deep dives.
Yeah.
Plenty more to say. Maybe that'll be for another time.
Yeah. All right, man.
Well,
I think we can wrap it up. Make sure if you have somehow made it to the end of this video, like, subscribe, comment, and share this video out. Check out our live stream. Depending on when this comes out, we do live streams every Thursday night. We just had one with RPG Pundit last week that is very interesting. That was a fantastic conversation.
Great discussion.
It's 3 hours, but it is absolutely worth it. And yeah, check out all our other content.
And this Saturday.
Yes, that's right.
And hopefully this will go up for Saturday.
It will,
I guess I should say Saturday, the 1st of July. We will be appearing on the Red Room's show.
That's correct.
On their channel.
Yeah, we'll be over at the Red Room.
Very much looking forward to that.
Red Room, Black Lodge, same thing.
It had to happen eventually.
It had to happen eventually. And yeah, we really like their games and are very, very excited to talk with them and hang out. So go, if you're somehow subscribed to us and you're not subscribed to the Red Room, go and subscribe to the Red Room.
Yes.
And we'll be sharing out the link for the stream. And I think it's actually probably already did share it out, but go check that out. It's going to be a really cool conversation.
Excellent.
But with that, remember, no apologies.
No apologies.
No compromises.